Uh-oh. Okay, so this game, I just sped through it for the first 9 minutes, and then I'll start over. You're going to open with a 2x poke into a 10-minute push, but you got to realize that the Terran's points of power, until Protoss does his first warp in, Terran is stronger than Protoss. After Protoss does his first warp in, Protoss is stronger than Terran until Terran gets an air unit, and then Terran is stronger than Protoss. So the point of the 2x poke is to poke in and do some damage and then go home. If you poke in and keep poking and staying, he'll progressively get stronger and stronger relative to you until eventually you die. And that's what's going to happen in this game. And this happened to me a million times way back while I was first figuring out how to make the 2x poke work. The key to the 2x poke is going home. It's not trying to kill him. You want to trade a little bit of infantry for all of his sentries and his higher tier units. And then just bail, go home, man. Another thing to note is that the 2x is an efficiency based build. If either of these units are idle for even a fraction of a second, or you get supply blocked, then the time that they spend idle is going to turn into just money in your bank that you can't spend. So right there, you're supply blocked for a second, and you weren't using these two buildings, and now you're not using this building for a second, and it's because you're microing, you're trying to kill those stalkers, but regardless of what the reason, the consequences are the same. This building is idle for a second. When we look at 6 minutes, I've seen a bunch of your 2x pokes, and you always have $900 spent plus concussive shells done, and usually combat shields about to start at 6 minutes, and you're $100 short as well as not having started combat shields yet. So this 300, 400, $450 that's in your bank, as well as you're about to miss another depot because you haven't started one. All that's it's bad in this build because you don't have the third building to make up for it. If you fall behind, you stay behind forever. Um, so we're gonna see you stay behind benchmark forever, obviously, because of what I just said. So we get up to 7 minutes, and we're expecting to see 1,500 or even more. If you did it absolutely perfectly, you'd have even more, like 1,700. And instead you have 1150 with $100 research, and you didn't start combat shields, and you know, you're a little bit probably behind on workers, not super far behind because you only supply block for a couple seconds each time. But that's dangerous because you do the 2x poke, you catch him expanding, you get to kill a couple of units, but now he's going to be warping in and warping in and warping in. And you're going to stay here, and your army, which right now should be about 4 Marauders stronger than it is, now maybe 3 Marauders stronger, is just barely strong enough to kill a couple more Zealots. And at this point, you should really be going home, because the reinforcements just aren't arriving fast enough. The Protoss warps in with 3 units instantly, whereas you have to walk your 6 units across the field. And you just shouldn't be pushing in again. Like, it's okay to kill that last Zealot if you can, but if not, go home. And the important thing to remember about going home in TVP is that the only units he has that can do damage to you while you retreat are Stalkers, and Stalkers are really terrible against Marauders with concussive shells and stuff. So he doesn't want to make a ton of Stalkers. So you can almost always just leave and go home. So this poke is nonsensical because you have 4 Marines and 2 Marauders. Like, you know what you have, and he has. Each Marauder is the equivalent of a Stalker, and each 2 Marines is the equivalent of a Zealot, maybe a little bit less. So he just clearly has more than you at this point, so why are you still here, why are you still fighting? So, I mean, this happens to me all the time, don't feel terrible about it, but you just stayed too long, and you went from way ahead from an awesome poke that caused him not only to skip probes, but also to delay his tech, also to be max on chrono boost energy, and also to lose a lot of units. To all of a sudden you just got crushed. You fell $400 behind on that last part. But more importantly than the damage you took to your actual army is the damage you took to your economy. By constantly looking at his base, you really want to be gearing up for that 10-minute poke, and you only got a minute left. And you just don't have the army. You want to have 2750 at this point, and you have 2100. You don't have combat shields, so it's really 2200 with no other tech. And 38 supply. You need to be building up that infantry ball so that when you get your medevac and your tank out, they'll have something behind them doing damage. Even if you were trading evenly, which you weren't, you can't be trading armies still at 9 minutes. It's really bad. So this was the I poked too long kind of mistake, and it happens to me all the time, and it's fine. And you did the absolute perfect reaction to it, which was to throw down a third Rax and start popping out more units. Because, like I said, the build is really efficient, and if you fall behind on money, you're never going to catch up. Excuse me. So it's 11 minutes. You only have 32 workers. You really cut workers heavily by accident while poking. 10 minutes, you want 38. You have 30. You're 8 workers short. But it didn't really impact your income too much because you didn't start cutting workers until like 7 minutes, and at 6.5 minutes, you're already fully saturated on one base. So it's not the end of the world, but it is going to cause you, when you pull workers, to be really far behind on income. So at this point, it's 11.5 minutes. You're on 41.75. It's not terrible. You're still doing a reasonably strong poke, and your opponent was thrown off just as much by what you did as you were thrown off by what you did. So I'm still hopeful that this will actually. It's almost definitely going to crush him. But just look how much weaker this second poke is from you when you stay too long in the first poke. So in this engagement, like we've talked about a bunch of times, you want your SCVs to be surrounding both the Banshee and the siege tanks while your infantry is behind them, so that when his zealots charge in, your tanks don't splash your own units. And if you can't do that because of force fields or because of whatever clumsy engage, your first priority is going to be to target these siege tanks onto things that are far away from your marines so that you don't splash yourself. I like how your SCVs are kind of surrounding your guys in a wall, and then he puts down force fields here, which make it so that his zealots can't get in to hit anything except for these SCVs. So right now his zealots are like not doing damage, and they all kind of melt away before doing damage. A lot of this just comes from the fact that his transition from like having a heavy early army to survive the poke was, I'm going to tech to Blink, which isn't helping, tech to Colossus, which I'm not going to reach, and start an upgrade and a second Forge that I'm not going to reach. And he just basically didn't have an army, so you get to win almost no matter what you did. But with that engagement, it went really well, and you've got to expect it to go really well. That's the point of this push. But it would have gone better. Your tanks didn't kill your own Marines and SCVs. Well, not really, but okay. So this is he made one of the classic blunders, which is to say, finally he stopped putting pressure on. Now I can tech, right? And that's always a mistake. You want, like, if 10 seconds ago your opponent was focusing on army and he stops attacking, that doesn't mean he stopped focusing on army. It just means he's gonna come back later with a bigger push. So yeah, he made the mistake of basically his army size not growing from, I would guess, about right here is like his last big army size growth. So at 8 minutes he's got, at 9 minutes he's got a pretty small army actually. He's had a small army this whole time. But now he goes like 2 minutes without almost any warpins, just warping in like 2 zealots that whole time. So now it's 11 minutes and he only has 2,500, so yeah. He made huge mistakes and we punished him for it, baby. So yeah, that poke was great. Poke a little bit less fervently, less committedly, whatever the terminology is, and make more SCVs. And other than that, this was perfect. Like, there's very little other advice that I can give. And I loved that when you started to fall behind, you made a third Rax. That's really beautiful. Good job.